when you're fear. There's no easy way to hear. And all the memories you love to bring, with all the things that you hate to scream. So tell me, I'm hollow on the inside. There's no trying to hide from this monster inside me. So if you try to criticize me like the world defines me, image of what I have become.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Browns Beat podcast. Happy New Year's to you and yours. This is the first podcast of 2025, and ladies and gentlemen, we got a good one. We have a good one for you today. The good news is the torturous season that was the 2024 Cleveland Browns is indeed over. Me and Tristan were talking about it before the podcast, but Jimmy Carter, he saw DTR versus Tyler Huntley, and that was it. So if that lets you know how bad of a season this was, there is that. But boy, we have a lot to talk about. We know where the Cleveland Browns are going to be drafting, so we're going to be talking about that, what picks we have, what it means, what should we do at 2, what do we think's going to happen at 2. Going to talk about the firings that happened on this Cleveland Browns coaching staff early this morning. That was a pleasant wake up. And then we're going to dive into, a kind of a hot button topic. Should the Browns trade Myles Garrett and whatever else falls in between on this podcast, Tristan? But yeah, I already said your name, but how are you doing, sir?
A lot better than I was when the Cleveland Browns were playing football. My goodness, it was like dragging your eyeballs through concrete. It was not a pretty sight. Wow. I mean, we didn't actually, I'm lying. We did have an offensive touchdown within the last 2 weeks of the season. So there we go. But it was garbage time. I felt nothing. It doesn't count. But no, the season was such a disappointment, right? And it feels like now's the first time we have something to look forward to in a very, very long time. I mean, the last time I looked forward to a game was after the Steelers game. Yeah. That was like, oh, maybe we can rebound. Maybe we can, and obviously we did not. But it's the first time that at least me personally, I've been able to like look forward and say, I'm excited for what's next.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really exciting feeling to have. And right now it's all about the what ifs, and I love it. I'm happy because we don't have to live in reality, which was not good to us this year. It was not. But yeah, it's really exciting, Derek, and I cannot wait to talk to you more about what we're going to be doing in the off season, particularly with the draft, as well as some of the personnel stuff that we got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be an off season full of, like you said, the what ifs, what should, and what will be, to say the least. Obviously, free agency comes before the draft, and we'll talk about that at some point later on. We're going to dive into pretty much every prospect we can, for the most part, as far as positions of need. We already did the quarterback position. Obviously, some of that has changed since. Not as much as I thought would be, but if you want, go check out that video. We'll obviously talk about the quarterback position more as this offseason unfolds. But yes, the season is over. The team that we thought was going to be winning 11 games, 12 games, won 3 games. And the Deshaun Watson experiment has blown up in our face. And the good news is, at least in our suffering this year, we had a first-round pick, which, Tristan, we found out today that the Cleveland Browns are going to be picking number 2 overall, thanks to the New England Patriots and Tennessee legend Joe Milton coming out, winning that game, pushing the Browns up from 3-2. So the Browns have 9 picks currently, and I want to throw a disclaimer here before I name a couple of these picks. These are subject to change, okay? The one thing that is not, or I guess it still is, but the Browns are picking 2. We're picking 33, 67, 93, 103, 167, 192, 206, and 207. That is 9 draft picks in the upcoming draft. It's a big difference, Tristan, from going from picking in the second and third rounds for the last few years to having number 2. But what is your initial reaction? What, in your opinion, does this mean for the future of this football team?
It means a lot, Derek. It's, we were talking a little bit about this before we clicked record. Certainly with that first pick, it gives you a lot of options. You can take a quarterback. You can, you can trade that pick and potentially pick up another first rounder next year. Who knows, maybe even more if somebody's desperate and wants that pick. You can really get a good haul. And who knows? I mean, it really could end up being a very, very good situation for us. And it's very important for me, at least, that the Browns have those options available to them at 2, which I don't think that they would have had as many options if they were at 3. With that being said, we'll get into our predictions and stuff later, what they should do. Certainly we'll talk a little bit about that, but we were also talking about it from the perspective before we started recording. It's the later picks too, like the second round pick. That's going to be like one of the first picks in the second round. That's, teams always like pick guys way ahead of when they're actually supposed to go. You're going to get a first round talent. It's going to happen. And it's going to be at a good position because the positions that this team need, there's a lot of depth in this class. And I will talk about what I feel like will happen. And a lot of it is going to be centered around what our needs are, as well as how I think the draft will pan out and kind of stuff like that. It's such a unique position, Derek. And I like where we finished because ultimately, like I said before, you have options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to a T. For me, the biggest thing is the later round picks because obviously there's going to be a lot of debate. There's going to be a lot of discussion as far as number 2 goes. But at 33, at 67, and again, those are not official. I could not find the exact numbers. That's going off of a mock draft. But regardless, we will be picking around those spots. And like you said, guys are going to fall. We've seen great talents fall into the top of the second round as long as I can remember. And for the Browns, to need help at wide receiver, running back, offensive line, defensive line, to be able to sit there top of the second round, Tristan, that is what excites me the most because the Browns, we're going to talk about BPA and we're going to talk about what we should do. But I think that best player available conversation is so much easier to factor in when you're at the top of the second round. Okay, which one of these guys fell to you and you can just snatch out of thin air? That is what I'm most excited about. And having 9 picks. Are we going to use all 9 picks? Maybe. We need a lot on this team. But ultimately, you have the ability to move around if you would like. And like you said, you are at a good spot right now. We're at number 2. You have literally every option of the draft on the board for you except one. And who that one could be a few different names. I mean, it is unsure. But as far as the rest of the draft goes, having those later round picks be higher is something that I think is significantly valuable, and hopefully it'll make up having a horrible football season this year. So with that being said, Tristan, let's talk about it. The Browns have the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, and this leads the conversation. What should we do? What should the Browns do at number 2? What say you, sir?
Yeah, so for me personally, when I look at the number 2 pick, so I feel like it's pretty obvious the Titans at 1, they're going to go quarterback. Um, the early reports are that their guy is Cam Ward, that they are really, really high on him and they're interested in him. Which, if that's the case, then Shedeur Sanders is at 2. But vice versa, one of those guys is going to be available to you at 2. And here's what I will say. If you watch our earlier episodes, when we talked about early thoughts on these quarterbacks, you know well I am not a Cam Ward guy at all. And I think it would be a mistake if we took him. But with that being said, if we do take him, obviously I'm going to support the decision. But it's a very, very important pick, and we have to make sure we get it right if we are picking there. Then, of course, you got best player available. You will have your pick of pretty much any top player at their position at that pick. You have the chance to pick generational talents at their positions. And I shouldn't say generational, but elite talents at their position. Generational should be reserved for guys like Myles Garrett. So, and then you have the third option, which is trade. And I'm kind of indifferent on what the Browns should do. For me, it's between best player available and trade. I think that if you can find a way to get a player of the caliber of, say, Abdul Carter across from Myles Garrett, your defense gets to a whole nother level that you didn't even know was possible. You could go and get your offensive tackle of the future. That's certainly something that you can do, your left tackle of the future. There's so many guys at the top of this draft that are really, really talented. But I also look at it and I say, because there's so many guys at the top of this draft that are very talented, maybe you can get more picks by trading down and you'll still have somebody, say, like you trade down with the Raiders or something like that because they want to leapfrog the Giants to take a quarterback. You can pick up another first rounder next year. You can pick up an extra second rounder for this year, which we already talked about. There's going to be some really good guys in that area. I mean, Derek, it's very possible that, like, in terms of running back, you could see guys as good as like Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins in the third round, like when we're picking. Like, that's how deep this running back class is. And so the more picks that you can have in that area in terms of the early second, early third in this year's draft, because it's at positions where it's really deep, at positions of need for us, you can find some really, really good players, Derek. It's a very unique situation. I'm really interested to see what we do. I think at this point, I'm leaning towards trade. I think that there's going to be a team that sells themselves on Cam or Shedeur and is willing to sell the farm. And the way I look at it is, if Shedeur or Cam were in last year's class, where would I have them? Shedeur, I'd probably have above Bo Nix. In terms of like first round picks where they ended up going, he would probably be above Bo Nix, right there with Penix for me. Fairly close. I probably would still go Penix over him. And then Cam Ward, obviously, I've said my piece. I wouldn't take him. So, I'm really indifferent about taking quarterback at that spot, and I think you can really get a lot for that pick, and you can get enough assets as well in the future where you can trade up in the future for your guy in the next coming drafts.
Yeah. For me, I think this comes down to one question. And unfortunately, it is a question that the Browns have to ask themselves and answer now, like within the next couple weeks. And it's not just because of the importance, but it's also how it affects the future of this team. And I'm probably giving it away, but offensive coordinator is a big question with this piece. Myles Garrett is a big question with this piece. And you have to ask yourself today, and you have to figure it out. are we drafting a quarterback? And I'm not talking about either one of these guys in particular as far as like who. I mean more so either one of them. Like, do they like either one of them and view them as the quarterback of the future? In my opinion, as far as what we should do, if it were up to me, if Cam Ward was there, my thoughts on Cam Ward. We'll have those conversations many, many times throughout this offseason. I would take Cam Ward if Cam goes number 1 and Shedeur Sanders is there at 2 and Travis Hunter is there at 2. For me personally, I'm probably taking Travis. But at that point, I am full on board with take those calls because Shedeur Sanders, I think he is a good quarterback. And I do think he will be good at an NFL level. But I think he has significant limitations. And he is not somebody that I would view as super confident. And I'm not saying I'm super confident in Cam Ward either. But as far as for your organization and making that decision, what the Browns cannot do is trade that pick and then have Cam Ward be an elite quarterback. Have Shedeur Sanders be an elite quarterback. That would be number 1 disaster. And for me, I think if the Browns get to 2 and they don't like whatever quarterback option is there, take your calls. If you don't like the calls you're getting, take Travis Hunter. I think it is that simple. But again, this comes down to the question of take a quarterback or not. And this is a deep conversation that we're going to have more in depth later. But just initially, my answer to that question is 1,000%, 100% yes. I think we should take a quarterback for a couple reasons. A, you have to. Like, I don't know how else to say it. You have to take a quarterback in this draft. I'm not saying it's going to have to be at 2, but your best bet would be early on. I mean, let's just be real. And let's look at the reality here. Jimmy Haslam is looking to sell tickets. He's got a billion-dollar dome, multi-billion-dollar dome that he is building. And this team right now is so bad that I've talked to many season ticket holders who have literally said, I'm done. Jimmy's job is to get butts back in seats. And listen, I love Travis. I love Abdul Carter. I love a lot of these very, 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 very talented players in this draft. In my opinion, the only way you're doing that is at quarterback. And ultimately, it's a business decision. And you hear a lot of scouting people and you hear a lot of draft personality people talk about what it means to have a top pick. And the common thing that is said is the NFL owners make the top picks, not the GMs. And for me, Tristan, I think that you are going to see Jimmy Haslam once again have his hand in the bucket here and say you're taking a quarterback. That's just my personal opinion. And in my opinion, I think that's what should happen. That is just me. As far as trading, just real fast, I don't think offers are going to be as high for this year's draft picks just because it is more potential versus certainty at the quarterback position. You look back at the 49ers with Trey Lance. They gave up 3 first-round draft picks. Like, if the Browns even remotely get something close to that, yeah, jump all over it. But if it's, hey, we'll move up 3, 4, 5 spots and we'll give you an extra third, kick rocks. Like, no. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to perspective and what you are getting in return. But this is interesting. This is really, really interesting, Tristan.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of like the quarterbacks that we could take, I want to make it very clear. I do think that Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback and he will be a good quarterback at the next level. I'm less so worried about his limitations. I think he will be a good quarterback. It's more so fit. I don't think he fits in a Kevin Stefanski offense. This is a guy that it's a lot of spread. It's a lot of similar things that In my opinion, Deshaun Watson does a lot. Like when I turned on his tape, that's the player I saw. And I promise it's, I looked at Deshaun Watson's highlights from Houston after watching Shedeur's film, and there's just a lot of similarities. I worry about the fit, and it's very clear, and we'll get into this as well, based off of the firings that were made, that we're looking to go back. So I worry about the fit with Shedeur. If we do end up taking him, I will say I will be happy because he is the best quarterback available in this draft class. I want to make that well known. My opinion on him has changed in terms of where my rankings are in terms of which ones I would want on the Browns. Currently, of all the quarterbacks, he would be number one. It's unique. A unique situation for me with this quarterback class. So if Shedeur is there, for me personally, I'm okay with taking him. If he's not, then yeah, I think me personally, I would love us to trade that pick. But regardless, it's important that we get this right. If we're picking a quarterback, we got to get it right. And I actually will disagree with you on something that you said, which was that you can't have the person that ends up being taken, like the quarterback that ends up being taken with that pick, become a superstar. I disagree, because ultimately it's about who's going to work out with you. That's important. Sam Darnold is having a career year with the Minnesota Vikings. Couldn't like make anything work with the Jets. And the reason why is because he's a natural fit into the Vikings offense. And you've seen it decently quite a bit throughout the league. Russell Wilson, just this year as well, an aged old veteran. He goes from Denver, where it just was not working for him. He goes to Pittsburgh, and he's had a good season with Pittsburgh. He's been a solid starting quarterback. You can look at that, and you can say the exact same stuff for Baker Mayfield if you really want to. I think it's a little bit of a different nuanced situation. We know a little bit closely. But that's certainly one that applies. Aaron Rodgers in the opposite direction. Kirk Cousins in the opposite direction. So a lot of it with quarterbacks is how they fit into the offense that you're going to have. And for me, I just don't see the quarterbacks that are available at 1 and 2 as fits in this offense. That's the biggest issue with me. And that's my ultimate reason for why I ended up falling on BPA or trade. For me, those are kind of my personal opinions. But there's a lot of different directions this could go in, and I'm just going to hope for the best.
Yeah, for sure. We will discuss fit at a later time, because I do disagree actually with both of these guys. In their own ways. I see what you're saying, 100%, absolutely, but I do think both of these guys could fit in their own ways, is kind of more so where I'm going on that. But it is absolutely a huge decision, and it's something that's going to not just affect the future of the Browns in this way. You have big news. I can see it on your face.
It's just really interesting. I can't believe I just saw this. Tyreek Hill says he's going to be leaving the Dolphins after the season.
Really? Like retire or?
No. So he said, this is the quote from Cameron Wolfe. She said, eye-opening comments from Tyreek Hill on his Dolphins' future after 8 to 9 non-playoff season. 8 and 9. Excuse me. He said, "I'm opening the door. I'm out, bro. It was great playing here, but at the end of the day, I got to do what's best for my career. I'm too much of a competitor to be just out there." Okay.
Whoa.
So, very interesting remarks.
Whoa.
Wow. I read that and I just, huh? And here's another one. The Giants are keeping Joe Schoen and Brian Dable. What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's
I did
crazy.
See that.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I did see that.
Wow. All right. Well, anyways.
But that's a perfect transition, because we are going to talk about superstars possibly wanting traded.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Circling back. Miles Garrett has been, not just this season, I would argue since the suck has started, been discussed on if he would want out, right? Because somebody of his caliber is a one-of-a-kind elite, best of the best players at his position, one of the best of our generation. And how much of being terrible can a guy like Miles Garrett take? And Miles alluded to the possibility of leaving a couple of weeks ago, where he basically said, I'm not going to be here for a rebuild, and I want to win with the Cleveland Browns. But if that's not the case, then, we'll see. Miles Garrett yesterday was asked about a possible extension, and he said, quote, "There's something coming." So, Tristan, I'm going to let you go first on this one. This is a tough question to answer. This is a very, very, very tough question to answer. Should the Browns trade Miles Garrett?
No. No. Very simple, cut and dry. Listen, I've said this repeatedly to friends and family who've asked me that question, and I think I've said it on here before. If you trade Miles Garrett, at best you're getting the second best player in the deal. So, Miles Garrett, players like him, they're generational. They do not come around often. And what I will point to the Rams, the year that they won the Super Bowl against the Bengals, and they had Aaron Donald. And Aaron Donald, generational player, right? We can admit that, right? We can say that. It's really easy. He's going to walk into the Hall of Fame, and they're going to have his gold jacket ready for him, and his whatever they call it, I can't remember the name of it. His bust is going to be it's already being made. Okay. You cannot give up on that. He himself, he's done a really good job throughout his career of staying healthy. Hasn't had too many games missed. Hasn't had really any crazy season-ending injuries. I don't even think, I think he could play until he's in his mid-30s and still be productive. Really productive, I'm talking. So if we're looking at it like that, he's got at least 5 more years at this level. For me, I think we would be giving up on that too soon. And not only that, but I look at the team surrounding him, and I know we won 3 games this year, Derek. This is not a bad team, especially defensively. Offensively, there was no identity. There was no management and stability from the quarterback position. There was nothing from the run game. And when you have an offense that's that anemic, it's going to tank your season. It is. It's an anchor that you cannot drag. So I think that it would be a big mistake to let Miles Garrett go when I think that at max you can get somebody in at the quarterback position to get this offense playing really, really well in 3 years. And again, I told you, Derek, this is a guy that can play at the high level for another 5. And if that's the case, might as well keep him for another 3. If it doesn't work, then you trade him. So I just think don't give up on him too early. I think if he wants to go, let him go for sure. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I still do believe in this front office. I do. We'll get into that conversation a little bit more in a bit here. I believe in our coach, and I just think that this year was, I don't want to say it was an anomaly, but at the same time, I think that this was a year where we learned a lot, and we will be a lot better for it. I have a lot of optimism about this team for next year, which you can call me crazy for it. I just do. I do. I still have optimism about this team. So I don't want to give up on Miles Garrett because I don't want to give up on this group of talent, especially and particularly on the defensive side. So I'm not ready to surrender yet.
Yeah, 100%. I think where this conversation draws that line is what you said. If he wants out. if he wants out. That's a totally different conversation versus, hey, where we're at right now. The problem becomes, okay, so back when essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was alluded to basically if he doesn't get a plan at quarterback that he views as, then he's going to want out. Is kind of essentially reading between the lines what that is. Which to me is what really opens the door for the draft. And I don't want to keep going back to the draft, but let's be honest. It is the be-all, end-all as far as the future of this team right now. When Myles Garrett says there's something coming, that is, there's so many different things that could mean. There's so many things that could mean. That could mean he's got a plan, that he's been told something. That could mean that he's working on a trade. Like, it could mean so many different things. Now, the quick answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. Myles Garrett's don't grow on trees. And he, like I said, one-of-a-kind generational talent. And the Browns should not have to trade a player like a Myles Garrett. The Steelers don't have to trade a player like TJ Watt. The Cowboys don't have to trade a player like Micah Parsons. And the Browns should not have to trade a player like Myles Garrett. I don't care what that return is. I don't care how many first rounders. I don't care what the situation is, what the scenario is. You shouldn't be put in that position to begin with. And the fact that we're here even discussing this it's insane. And it shows how much of a failure this team has had in handling this team since he's been here. Now, when it comes to the should, no. But let's talk about what if. What if the Browns do need to trade Myles Garrett? To me, I know people want to shorten it down to 2 first-round draft picks. No, that conversation starts with 3. And if it doesn't start with 3, it better start with 2 first-round picks and a few second-round picks. Like, that's the starting point. Because I am not letting Myles Garrett go for nothing. And I know whatever you get in return is not going to be equivalent to what he does for this football team. But in a scenario where you're legitimately talking about trading Myles Garrett, it's going to be a high, hefty price. Now, let's draw this back to the draft one more time. This is why, in my opinion, the Browns have to take a quarterback. Because of what you just said, Tristan. I think as bad as this season was, I don't think this team is going to be this bad again. And you're at a position now, whatever your opinion is of the 2 quarterbacks, you are in the spot to get 1 or 2, or might have the chance at both, depending on how it falls, to get the top quarterbacks in this draft. And when you're talking about a player like Myles Garrett, if that is true and that is his 100% intent, to get a plan at the quarterback position that he views is good and correct, then in my opinion, you absolutely have to draft a quarterback. I don't think there's any other way around it. So when it comes to that number 2 pick, like I said, it does not just have implications on the quarterback position. It has implications on Myles Garrett. It has implications on Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry. Like, this number 2 pick, if it is a quarterback, and even if it's not, because if it's not, what happens if Myles goes to that front office and says, I want out? Like, what happens? It is such a huge deal. Now, last point I will make. To what you said about the team, right? And I do agree with you. I think this team can be back vying for a playoff spot next year. And I know it sounds crazy, but again, I do believe that to be true. This team is very similar to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals have a fantastic offense right now, and their defense is awful. And ultimately, that just cost them from getting to the playoffs. And even though it's very different, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think this Browns offense that was 28th in NFL as far as offensively, and 32nd in scoring. Historically bad offense, not just for the Browns, but in the NFL. If you can bring that just to middle of the road, this team is so much better. So much better. Because offense and defense work together. And, if this defense had an offense that wasn't 3 and outing every single time they were on the field, they would have been so much better. So, as far as those things go, I do think you are 100% correct. Obviously the Browns should not trade Myles Garrett. And I know I said last thing that time, but I'm going to throw this in real fast. What happens if the Browns do trade Myles Garrett, Tristan? What are we going to do with those first-round picks we get? We're taking a quarterback. We're taking a quarterback. So what would be the point of telling Myles, no, I don't like any of these quarterbacks, and then you turn around and you're going to have to draft one anyway? I know it's not apples to apples, but it's a situation. It's a situation that's got to be figured out.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I disagree with that point. You are picking somebody. If you're picking a quarterback at 2, you got to pick somebody that works. You cannot miss it. And that's more important than anything, because the quarterback position is the most important thing. Because if we pick a quarterback at 2 and it doesn't work, then we've wasted that pick and we're in the same spot 3 years, 4 years down the line than that we are in today. So me personally, it's more so about making sure you get it right. And that's personally why I think that it's better for us to not take 1 and 2, because I don't see the fit. I just don't. In this Kevin Stefanski system, I don't see the fit. So for me, it's a no. But again, I'm willing to change my mind. But I don't see that happening right now, in particular. And in terms of, I don't think it makes sense to draft a quarterback with the goal of making Myles Garrett happy. Your goal with drafting a quarterback is to get a guy who's going to be a franchise quarterback, who's going to be up there and compete with the likes of Patty Mahomes, Josh Allen. You got to get a quarterback that can do that and has that potential. It's too short-sighted for me to pick one just to make Myles Garrett happy. If ultimately I love Myles Garrett and I want him to be a Brown for his entire career, if he wants to go, if we don't take one of the quarterbacks that he approves of, then I think you just have to let him go. You cannot let your players dictate what you do. We've seen it absolutely fall on its face. Look at the New York Jets. Mm-hmm. Look at them. Aaron Rodgers has called all the shots, and they are exactly where they were with Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold's a hell of a lot better now, by the way. Ask him how he feels. He's about to get paid in this offseason. So, for me, it's a really simple, easy thing for me personally. You got to make sure you get it right. You can't let Myles Garrett alter your decision. Your decision in the draft has to be separate from what Myles Garrett wants, essentially. You have to separate those. And I think that there's still a way we can make moves at quarterback and Myles Garrett is happy and it doesn't involve us taking somebody at 2. I still think that that's possible. I do. I'm not going to give up on that at all. So, but if he wants to go because we don't do that, I also understand it from his perspective. But at the same time, we're the Cleveland Browns. We're not the Myles Garretts. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we have to act like it. And I love Myles Garrett. Again, want to make that very clear. So, it's just a tough spot. I hope that he's understanding, and I hope that he can stick around. He needs to be around his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the ideal scenario. I think for me, the biggest thing is how much does his influence matter to this organization? Because if they are living in fear of him leaving, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but if that is the case, and he is sticking to his guns as far as the quarterback position goes, then it damn sure is going to have an influence. It's just a matter of how much. And I agree, you cannot dictate your team based off of one player. However, I don't think you can let one player walk out of the door because of fear. You cannot let fear control you in this situation. That's my thing.
I mean, I just argue the opposite way. If you're making that decision because you don't want Myles Garrett to go, you're doing it off of fear.
Yeah, no,
So
100%.
I understand your point. This is one of the very few things that we disagree on. So I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on it. But
yeah, which that's gonna make this offseason so much more fun.
There's a lot that we disagree on this offseason. It's gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna have some really intriguing conversations. I'm excited.
Absolutely. One thing that hopefully we both can agree on here is that the Browns made good decisions today. The Cleveland Browns announced this morning that they have fired offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey and offensive line coach Anthony Dickerson. Pretty much, I mean, it's done now. It's been out there, confirmed. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry's jobs are safe for this season. Whether if you like that or hate that, that is the truth. Don't shoot the messenger. This was not surprising at all. You have a guy in Ken Dorsey who was brought over for Deshaun Watson. That has blown up. It was an abject failure. And so he goes out, baby goes out with the bathwater in that scenario. And then Andy Dickerson, this one was kind of not surprising that he was fired. It's surprising what you heard towards the end of this year. Allegedly, Mike Vrabel, who put all of your money on him being the next Patriots coach, was the fill-in offensive line coach. And yeah, I said it earlier. I'll say it again before I send it over to you, Tristan. But Browns were 28th in offense this year, and we were 32nd in scoring, which, if you were unaware, that is literally dead last. And last time I checked, in order to win football games, you have to score. So, yeah.
I think you're right there. I think you're right. Yeah. I think I saw our average points per game was 15.8. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Oh my goodness, there. Those two things had to happen. We talked a bit about how there was in the off season, it was a focus on getting guys in the door that were going to help Deshaun Watson and building an offense that would suit Deshaun Watson. Well, we did that and fell flat on its face. Was not good. It was terrible. So you got to get rid of those guys. You do. It's obvious what the Browns are planning on doing. They're gonna go back to that traditional West Coast style system, focusing a lot on the play action, the heavy like 2 tight end sets. So expect us to spend some money on a backup tight end this free agent period. Ultimately, it's. I agree with what we're doing. We're going full steam ahead with the traditional Kevin Stefanski offense. And for those that might be a little bit concerned with doing that, look at Minnesota. It's literally copy paste, and they had a great success this year with Sam Darnold. So I've got all the reason to believe that going in that direction will be okay, especially with the talent that we have defensively.
I realized I was muted. Yeah, no, this 100%, this was the right decision. Couldn't have said it any better. These guys were tied to Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson is no longer. I mean, it's that plain and simple. As far as reacting to it, it's not a surprise. This is not a surprise whatsoever. It's unfortunate. Ken Dorsey being a former Brown would have been a good story. Too bad. Don't care. I'd rather have somebody succeed who wasn't a former Brown than somebody fail as a former Brown. I don't care. That does not matter whatsoever. Now, as far as what the Browns should do, you, I believe, are correct in what you're saying here. I think you go back to Kevin Stefanski and his bread and butter. And a couple things here. A, why would Kevin do anything else? I mean, he is on the hot seat, as much of a hot seat as you can be on going into next year. Let's just be real. If you come out and fail miserably again at the start of next year, odds are he's out the door. And I'm not saying that is necessarily right or fair. It's just probably the truth. Now, some candidates have been alluded to here. Tommy Rees, currently on the Browns coaching staff, is rumored for that job. Clay Kubiak, which is a name that I'm very interested in, on that list. Josh McCown, which I'm actually really interested in for a few reasons. And then David Girardi. So, Tristan, what I will say, shifting gears to who the Browns should hire, I don't think who the Browns are going to hire is going to call plays. And I don't necessarily think they should. I think this whole experiment with Ken Dorsey is kind of proven, hey, maybe Kevin is the best option. But as far as who, I think there's a couple interesting choices. Tommy Rees is already in the building. You know him. There could be a good relationship there. It was reported that Tommy Rees was a part of the pass game, which I don't know if that's a glowing, endorsement, but, it is what it is. Clay Kubiak, the one I really have circled. You already mentioned it, the Minnesota ties, Clint Kubiak. I think that is a real option. I think that is a real option. The other one, this is the one I'm interested in for many reasons, but one being, if the Browns do go quarterback, Josh McCown. Josh McCown, a guy who is a perennial example of what it means to be a quarterback in the NFL. Not that he was good, not that he was great. What does he have? Experience. And what has he done? Bounced around the league, been a viable option for teams throughout the past. And I would not hate the idea of bringing in a guy like Josh McCown, not to call plays, but as the offensive coordinator, as a former quarterback, having a huge role in helping whichever potential rookie quarterback is here. I don't hate that whatsoever. Do I want him calling plays? No, not really. But influence on the offense? Sure, absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. And that's a guy that can speak the same language. If you bring in a Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or whoever, having a guy there that can really, get through, I think is a big thing. But 100% go back to Kevin's offense and evolve it into being whatever the most it can be.
Completely agree, which is why I think that Kubiak is probably going to be the guy. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, that would be my bet, because it just makes too much sense. There's so much history between Gary Kubiak, I believe his dad, and
Kevin
Stefanski.
Did I say Clint Kubiak?
I think you did. So I can't remember. There's so many different ones. Yeah. I can't remember, but there's so many links for this happening. I feel like it's destined. And with what was happening in Minnesota this year, it just, to me, it just feels like it's obvious. I think that I think that that's the route that we go. It's, again, I honestly, offensive coordinator, I really don't care, if I'm being blunt. Like, it's really not gonna matter too much. This person's not going to call plays. They're more so just going to be assisting in like drawing up plays, especially in the beginning part of the season, and helping with like game plan, the scripts and stuff for the starts of games. Like that's what it's going to be. So I really, honestly, I don't particularly care who we go for at this point, because it's going to be Kevin Stefanski, his offense, and that's what I'm happy about.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be.
Even if this offense is just middle of the pack next year, not only will it be much, much better because we'll be a much better team, but I will feel a lot better because, oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so much pain. I would rather read the dictionary before I watch that offense again. That was bad. I'm talking front to back of the dictionary. Like that's at least I'll pick up, like, at least I'd get something from that. I'd find some interesting words to actually use during these podcasts. Watching the Browns offense is just despair.
Dude, I mean, think about it. I love Jameis. I do. But Jameis Winston turned this Browns offense from miserable to at least somewhat entertaining for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Like that. It had me seeing Joe Flacco highlights in the Browns uniform being like, what is this? Like, I don't remember this being this good.
Oh, dude. And that's also part of the reason, like, it just makes too much sense to go back to Kevin, because you could argue that Joe was the first quarterback that he had that was actually built for his offense. Mm-hmm. Like Baker, he's more so like a gunslinger type guy, I mean, I guess Joe is too, but it's a little bit different. They play a little bit different styles. Also, just Baker just didn't work out here. The Deshaun Watson move was not good at all. Although I could actually argue Jacoby Brissett was a Kevin Stefanski guy. Because he actually, and this is constantly overlooked, he had a good season when he was here under Kevin. So, but still, the point stands. Like he can call a good offense. You got to get the right quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. Which kind of ending off on an interesting note here, Tristan. What we are going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is we are going to probably embarrass ourselves, in the upcoming months when we take a look back at this and see what we said. But what we are going to do is give an initial first prediction for what the number 2 overall pick will be. Now, I want to say this is, let's just say it like this. This is our first day after finding out where we're picking thoughts. This will change
day
significantly.
Of.
Day of.
Yeah.
Probably day after when you
literally
hear this,
it was hours before I was rooting for Joe Milton. So it's fresh. It's raw.
Yeah. So this is very early, and yes, we know that. But in the spirit of having fun here, we're gonna give you a prediction. So Tristan, go ahead.
All right, let the craziness begin. So, I'm not a full karmic believer. Okay, I'm gonna start this here, but I do believe that things happen for a reason. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that at number 2, you're gonna see real excitement. So let me paint you a picture here.
Oh boy!
With the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans are gonna select Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, and instantly all eyes are gonna turn to the Cleveland Browns, and the conversation is, well, surely they're picking Shedeur Sanders, and then what's going to happen is Roger Goodell is going to walk up to the podium. He's going to say, with the second overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns select, not trade. They're going to select Drew Aller, Penn State from quarterback. quarterback from Penn State.
Yep.
The boy who grew up as a diehard Browns fan in Ohio, Medina, Ohio, is going to come out into this year's draft because he sees the chance he's going to be able to get picked by his boyhood team, the Cleveland Browns. He was born to be the savior of this team, Derek. I am so certain of it. And he's going to get picked at 2 for the Cleveland Browns because they're going to look at him. And it's Andrew Berry making this pick, by the way. And you know what Andrew Berry is going to do? He's going to look Drew Aller right in the eyes, and he's going to say, in 2018, when we had the chance with the first overall pick, me and the other analytics guys said, we want Josh Allen. And you know what we were told by John Dorsey? These nerds don't know what they're talking about. And he's going to prove himself right again. And he's going to take the prototype guy, the raw talent who's got everything you want but needs development. That's what's going to happen, Derek.
Oh, boy. This is where we're at.
Yes, it is.
I would like to clarify for those of you watching, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, didn't Drew Aller say he was going back to school?
He did.
Yes, he did.
He did. There have been many reports by credible media personnel that there are NFL executives that believe that if Drew Aller has a good playoff, he's going to the draft because he could be taken high. And a lot of those reports have said he could potentially be the first quarterback off the board if he were to go. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah,
if Drew Aller had it told to him, you come out of the draft, lowest you're falling is 2, he's going. He's going.
Oh, yeah. Oh, not a doubt. Now, I will say that is certainly a possibility. Like, I'm not discrediting you at all. I do think there is a chance that he does come out. Go ahead, sorry.
It's just, if I'm being, like, in terms of what's most probable, we're trading down.
Yeah.
We're trading down. We're trading down with the Raiders, and at wherever pick they have, I think it's like 6 or 7, it's Abdul Carter or it's a left tackle. So
probably.
That's personally where I'm at.
Yeah.
But my prediction is that the boy who was born to be the franchise quarterback of the Cleveland Browns becomes the franchise quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. That's my prediction.
Well, unfortunately for this team, what is destined to happen usually never does. Now, I will say, you're going to hear this and you're going to think, of course, but I'm letting you know that this is not me wishing. I genuinely believe this is going to happen. I think Shedeur Sanders goes 1. I think the Tennessee Titans are in a spot where they have Will Levis, which, you know, Will is kind of his own Jameis Winston. He's
special.
He's something, that's for sure. And I think, you know, when you talk about the conversation of fit, I think Shedeur Sanders is a much better fit in Tennessee. And I actually think that would be most beneficial for him versus having a team like the Raiders trade up. That would be nightmare. I know it's a big city, whatever, but as far as initial success, I think if you're Shedeur, I think you buckle up, put on your cowboy hat, and go to the Tennessee Titans because I think that would be most beneficial. And I think because of that, it's going to help a lot there. Because scheme-wise, he's a good fit, right? The criticism that I have for Shedeur Sanders is arm strength, right? The dude's accurate. He's a playmaker, whatever. I have legitimate concerns at an NFL level as far as arm strength goes. Whether if you think that's fair or unfair, you know, we'll talk about that as the draft goes on, as this goes on. But I do think what I view as his limitations, I think would be much suited better in Tennessee than anything else. Because keep in mind, who's there? It's Callahan. It's Callahan and his kid. They want to do things physical. They want to run the ball. You know, and they're not necessarily an offense that's going to attack as far as deep goes. What's up?
I disagree. I disagree with you. And the reason why I disagree is because Callahan cut his teeth in LA, right?
Okay.
And who are their two quarterbacks? Goff and Stafford. Pocket passers, guys who had cannons. He ended up going to Cincinnati. His quarterback, Joe Burrow, who his
Yeah.
arm strength is underrated in my opinion. He's a very, very accurate thrower of the football, can make any throw that you want him to, throws the anticipation. Great guy. Great quarterback. I think Cam Ward more so fits that profile.
See,
I really do.
So my thing with that is I think there are a lot of similarities with Joe Burrow and Shedeur. And I think what you said, right? Because Joe Burrow, when he was coming out, everybody's like, oh, he doesn't have that crazy of arm strength, which he doesn't. But what he does have is ball placement, accuracy, timing. Shedeur, I could argue, has a lot of that. I think he has a lot of that. So, I mean, obviously, who knows? We have a long way to go. It's going to be a lot of silly season regardless. But I do think ultimately the Titans take Shedeur at 1. I think they embrace the Sanders family, and that will be interesting to see how that goes. At 2, I'm not saying this because obviously I like this guy. I genuinely believe this is happening. I felt this way for a long time. I think Cam Ward is a Cleveland Brown, and for a couple reasons. A, obviously you're in a position where you got to figure out quarterback. You're getting one on a rookie contract, 5 years of control, which would be the same way with Shedeur. It would be the same way with Drew. It would be the same way with anybody that we take in the first round. I just want to say that. But point being, you're getting a quarterback on a cheap contract, and you're giving hope. You're giving excitement, I guess, for the future. There's so many reasons why I think, and I'm locked in, I think we go quarterback. For me, Cam Ward, I think, is, and this is not as far as directed at you, this is more directed at everybody in this whole conversation. I think he is massively being what was the word? It just crossed my mind. Disrespected. That was what I was trying to say. I think he is massively being disrespected. This is a guy who went to a small school, played well, transferred up to a bigger school, still small school in Washington State, played very well, decided he was going to the NFL. Nope, goes to Miami, bigger school. And every single level that he's been at, he has excelled. He's played well, different offenses, different programs, different, I guess, difficulties, if you want to classify it as that. This year with the Hurricanes, 4,313 yards, 39 touchdowns, 7 picks, 88.7 QBR. That's what he put up this year at Miami. And I know it's in the ACC. I'm just throwing it out there. This is a guy that has played in many different offenses, many different schools, and he's played well at each level. I think what the Browns are looking for, I think, is what he is going to bring. And this is obviously something we will dive much deeper in as time goes on, and I'm not here to do that now, but this is a 6'2" guy who's 220 pounds and can move. He is not built like a Josh Allen, like a Drew Aller, but he is a big enough quarterback, and he's but he's thick. He can withstand an NFL beating. And he's got an arm. He throws strikes. That's what I love about him the most. When you watch him play football and he needs to zip it, he can throw absolute strikes. Now, I will say, a lot of people fall in love with the flashy stuff. That's not why I think this is going to happen. What I think, or the reason why I think it's going to happen ultimately, is when you turn on the film and you watch Cam Ward and you kind of ignore the flashy stuff and you just watch the typical what would be NFL throws, I see a lot of what he does translating to the next level. And I think put him in an offense with Kevin Stefanski. I forgot to mention this off the start. My prediction, what I genuinely believe is going to happen, Kirk Cousins is a Cleveland Brown. He's the starter. Cam Ward is drafted. We sit Cam Ward, have Kirk Cousins be that guy. And I'm telling you, bro, I'm telling you, I could be totally wrong. This could be the one, hand to God, where I am so wrong that it's hilarious. If I had to put money on it today, like I genuinely believe that this is happening. And I'm not saying that to troll you or troll anybody else that doesn't like him. I really think it's gonna happen.
That's fine. And listen, if it happens, make no mistake about it, I'm not going to be the happiest about it, but
Yeah.
I will certainly support the player, and I'll get excited for it. I'm not going to like if he ends up being the Browns pick, I'm not going to like be miserable this whole time here. It's not going to be like some people were for Baker. Like day one he got in and people hated him. It's not going to be like that. There's going to be optimism. There's going to be hope, and I'm going to want him to be successful. I disagree on the translating the NFL side of it. And there's going to be a long conversation about this in the offseason. I am sure about it. For me, I do agree with you. I think Kirk Cousins is a Cleveland Brown. I think that is for sure. And the reason why I'm predicting Drew Aller is Drew Aller needs a year, possibly two, of development before he can step in and be ready at the next level. And I could argue Cam could as well. Certainly Cam, definitely in my opinion, will
at least a year.
At least a year. He's extremely raw. For me, the reason why it's Drew over Cam, it's processing, moving through reads. Drew does it at a lot higher of a level. Throwing with anticipation, he does at a lot higher of a level than Cam currently does, at least whenever I'm evaluating. In terms of athleticism, Cam's got him beat by a country mile. He is a lot more athletic. He can do more with his feet. However, I think Drew Aller's athleticism is a bit slept on. I will say that. Arm talent, I think they're similar, but I think Drew Aller's got a very, very special arm. I think in terms of arm talent guy, I don't think there's a guy that has as much natural raw arm talent as Drew Aller since Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Josh Allen. I think in terms of pure arm talent, I don't think there's anybody else that has come out that's like it.
I could argue CJ, but CJ doesn't have as strong as an arm.
Exactly. Not as strong.
Yeah.
But Aller, because the biggest issue with Aller, and this is part of the reason why I like Aller so much, is, and I know this is kind of going to be a preview of our quarterback episode, and you might hear this argument repeated, but the issue with Aller is inconsistency with footwork. Why is he inconsistent with his footwork is the question I ask. The reason why he's inconsistent with his footwork, his head is faster than his feet. That's what it is. When he sees something open, he's so quick to throw it that his feet aren't in the right positions at times. That you can fix. That you can, in my opinion, you can easily fix that. That's just reps and practice against some really good pass rushers. We got Myles Garrett. That will definitely wake him up. So, like, I just, for me, there's more of a natural, the QB instincts that I look for. Drew's got those. It's more so just about some fundamental stuff that you got to clean up. And I think you can do that with him, similar to what Josh Allen was able to do. That's where I see it. Cam, it's, you know what? I'll save it. Because I know you're going to want to rebuttal this. So I will save it when we have the quarterbacks episode. We'll have something really enjoyable to debate on that episode for the off season. I can't wait. But
yeah, the only thing that's really frustrating about this now is we're going to be sitting here talking about quarterback, and I would love to be able to put film up and say, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what he does special. And YouTube, being the pricks that they are, won't let you do that. Yeah. So we're just going to have to text back and forth, and I'll,
Yeah, maybe we can do like screenshots of stuff or something.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But again, like it's tricky because of YouTube. So, But yeah, I cannot wait to have these conversations. Not only is this going to be such a nuanced and interesting conversation about quarterback, you're also going to see it with running back. You're going to see it with wide receiver. You're gonna see it with offensive tackle. Like there are a lot of positions in this year's draft. You're gonna see with edge. You're gonna see a lot of positions in this year's draft where there's a lot of talent, especially in the first 3 rounds, at positions of need for the Browns. So I'm really intrigued to see what we do from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether if you are a fan of any of these quarterbacks or anybody else, the bottom line factor here is the Browns have an opportunity to get a really, really good player at number 2. And I would argue they have a chance to get a really, really good player at 33, 60, 67, 93. There's a lot. So we will be here throughout the entire course of this this offseason, through free agency, through the draft, through scouting. Hopefully there's a lot of new faces who come upon us here. And let us know what you think. Let us know your thoughts, whatever it is. Controversial opinion, whether if it's the standard, bottom line, baseline opinion, whatever it is. Your phone is flashing, sir. I can see it on your glasses.
Just a group chat. Okay, never mind.
Oh, but
okay, yeah, that's better.
But yeah, all right, everybody. Browns have the number 2 pick. Let the offseason begin. Tristan, you got anything else?
Let the delusion fly. We're 17-0 next season.
Yep.
It's happening.
Super Bowl, Super Browns, baby. Here we come. All right, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.